Ever wonder what it really takes to feed a billion people? We're not just talking about putting food on the table. We're talking about fueling a whole nation's health and its future, especially when that population is growing like crazy. So let's get into one of the biggest agricultural puzzles of our time.
Yeah, you're seeing that right. Over 1 billion people. That's the scale we're dealing with in a country like India. And that number, it just keeps going up. You can imagine, this creates a monumental challenge that's going to need some seriously brilliant solutions.
So to feed this growing nation, the country is going to need more than 250 million tons of grain every single year. I mean, just try to wrap your head around that number. It is an absolutely staggering amount of food.
But here's the real kicker. The easy answer, just farm more land? Well, that's not an option. India is already one of the most intensely farmed countries on the planet. There's just no more room to expand. So the solution isn't about getting bigger, it's about getting a whole lot smarter.
Okay, so let's start with the basics. A balanced diet begins with energy, and we get that energy from carbohydrates, mostly from cereals. Think about staple crops like the rice and maize you're seeing here. They are the absolute bedrock of the food supply.
Next up, you've got to have protein, right? It's essential for growth and development. And that's where pulses come in. We're talking about things like chickpeas and soybeans. They're a totally vital piece of this nutritional puzzle.
And to round out the big three, we need fats. We get those from oil seeds. This amazing-looking sunflower, for example, is a huge source. So you put these three groups together, cereals, pulses, and oil seeds, and that's the core of what a nation needs to grow.
So, we know what we need to grow, but figuring out how to grow it, well, that's where things get complicated. In fact, some of our biggest successes in the past have actually created a whole new set of problems that we have to solve today.
And hey, let's give credit where it's due. There have been some massive wins. The Green Revolution, for instance, was this incredible leap forward. It pretty much transformed India from a country that had to import food into one that could feed itself. It was a total game changer.
But there was a catch, a big one. That revolution came at a price. It meant we had to use our natural resources, our water, our soil, way more intensively. And that has put the environment under some serious stress, threatening the very balance we rely on. We just can't keep pushing it that hard.
So what's the plan now? Well, that brings us to the modern scientific approach. It's a super clear, three-part strategy all designed to boost yields in a way that's actually sustainable. We're going to improve the crops themselves, then how we grow them, and finally, how we protect them. Let's break that down.
All right, part one. It's all about improving the very seeds we plant. The idea here is to build better, stronger, more efficient plants right from the very beginning, starting at the genetic level.
Now, one of the main tools for this is a process called hybridization. What's so cool about this is that you can think of it like creating a plant superhero. Scientists take two different plant varieties and cross them to combine their best traits, like, say, the high yield from one parent and the awesome disease resistance from another, all into one brand new super crop.
And the wish list for these new crops is pretty amazing. Of course, getting a higher yield is always priority number one. But they're also engineering for things like biotic resistance, which is just a fancy way of saying it can fight off pests and diseases. And they're also building in abiotic resistance, which means it can survive tough conditions like a drought or a heat wave. It's all about creating a much tougher plant.
Okay, so we've got these incredible super seeds. Now what? Well, the next step is making sure they have the absolute best environment to grow in. And that brings us to production management, how we actually take care of the land and the plants.
A huge part of this is managing the nutrients in the soil, and this slide shows the big trade-off perfectly. You've got manure, which is amazing for the long-term health of the soil, but it's kind of slow. On the other hand, you have chemical fertilizers, which give you a quick boost and high yields, but if you overuse them, you risk polluting water and really damaging the soil. Finding that perfect balance is key.
And here's another really clever technique farmers are using. It's called intercropping. It's a fantastic way to make the most out of every inch of land. Instead of planting a giant field of just one crop, you plant two or more together in a special pattern.
Yeah, check this out. You can actually see what it looks like in action here. The crops are picked so that their nutrient needs actually complement each other, which means nothing gets wasted. Plus, and this is the really cool part, this setup naturally helps stop pests and diseases from spreading and wiping out the whole field. It's a total win-win.
All right, so we've got our smarter crops, we're using better growing methods, but the job's not done yet. The third and final piece of this puzzle is protecting that harvest from everything out there that wants to ruin it before we can even get to it.
And believe me, the threats are real. First, you've got weeds, right? They're basically just thieves, stealing food, water, and sunlight from your crops. Then you have insect pests that literally attack the plant. And on top of all that, you've got diseases caused by tiny things like bacteria and fungi. Any one of these can completely wreck a harvest.
So you see, there's no single silver bullet here. The real solution is what's called an integrated approach. Sure, it can involve carefully using chemicals like pesticides, but it also relies heavily on smarter preventative tactics, like rotating which crops you plant each year, and using those super resilient varieties we were just talking about.
So when you pull all three of these strategies together, smarter seeds, better production, and stronger protection, what do you get? You get a real, cohesive, scientific roadmap for the future of farming, for real food security.
And this is really the key thing to remember. It's a three-pronged attack. First, you start with better seeds, high yield and resistant. Second, you nurture them with sustainable practices that actually take care of the soil. And third, you defend them with smart, integrated pest management. All three have to work together.
The science gives us the tools we need to tackle this enormous challenge of feeding over 1 billion people. But it leaves us with one final and really big question. It's a question for all of us, really. Can we put these strategies to work wisely enough to build a food system that's not just productive now, but truly sustainable for all the generations yet to come?